Welcome to the Abu Dhabi Sustainability Week series, this time focused on developing the UAE hydrogen economy. I'm Bart Cornelissen and I will be your moderator for today. Why are we doing this? Why are we discussing in Abu Dhabi Sustainability Week hydrogen? One, because electrification is important, but not the only way to get to the energy transition. Hydrogen will be a key enabler to address the hard-to-abate sectors. And the UAE is really at the forefront of a lot of the developments and has the opportunity to be really well-positioned to drive this forward. I'm honored to be joined for this discussion today by Mohammed Abdelkader El Ramahi, the Director, Asset Management, Technology and Green Hydrogen in the Clean Energy Division of Masdar, Felipe Abalayes, the SVP Hydrogen and Carbon Capture and Storage at BP, and Florian Mertz, Director at UAE Industries at Mubadala. To start with you, Mohammed, why is hydrogen so important? And what do you see the hopes are for the future for its usage?
Well, thank you, Bert. I think this is a very exciting topic to speak about today. And I think it is exciting because, as you said, the green hydrogen will shape the future of energy transition. It's a very important tool. It is called the fuel of the future. From one perspective, we know while the endeavor globally to address the sustainability issues, the mitigation on climate change and decarbonization initiatives that cuts across many sectors globally, we know that this is not enough. The world economy still needs too much fuel to drive its various industries and to help in the growth of economy. And number two, we need this to be reliable and cost effective and still look at all the environmental conservation issues. Now, hydrogen would be the center stage of all this scene, where the technology promises to produce hydrogen in an environmentally friendly way. We're talking about the electrolysis process where green hydrogen is produced from water. The byproduct is oxygen. And to produce that green molecule, we use the green electron, the energy, the electricity required to drive that process that comes from renewable energy sources. This product, the green hydrogen and its derivative, and green hydrogen comes in a bigger spectrum of many derivatives that promise to look after multiple sectors where it will be the future fuel for transportation. It will be the feedstock to many industries across the world. It will be a major fuel for co-firing and generation of electricity. It will be in fertilizer business. It will be in steel industries. It will cut across many sectors that help the international community continue its sustainable growth, help the industries in meeting expectation, and at the same time mitigate CO2 footprint and align with the decarbonization strategic initiatives that cuts across. These becoming a compulsory requirement that costs the industry a lot of penalties if they do not comply with the stringent requirements that are populated from Europe and cutting across the global community at large. And furthermore, it will be a cost-effective, reliable fuel that empower all these sectors collectively.
Okay, thank you very much, Mohammed. Building upon that, Felipe, what is BP's hydrogen strategy and specifically also your partnership with the UAE?
Thank you, Bart. First, I just want to thank the organizers and the opportunity to join our good friend Mohammed and Florian and yourself in this event today. Look, BP's strategy, of course, as we've indicated, is to become a net zero company by 2050 or earlier than that. In our view, as Mohammed has indicated, hydrogen plays a key role in that regard. It's one of our 5 key growth engines in BP that we've declared externally. We think hydrogen will be up to 8% of the energy matrix by 2050, but when you account the use of hydrogen as a feedstock for fuels, ammonia, etc., could even be close to twice that. So it's the same scale by 2050 as natural gas today. It's a key pillar of the energy transition, as said. In BP, we're really progressing our hydrogen agenda across 4 key themes. First of all, we're looking to decarbonize the hydrogen that we use in our refineries, which is over 500,000 tons per annum. That is critical because we provide an anchor demand for those projects, and we're looking for a combination of green and blue hydrogen solutions across our assets. In some of our refining assets, we have industrial customers in the vicinity of the refineries, and we'll look to scale the hydrogen solutions to supply hydrogen to third-party users in those hubs. We're also pursuing other large industrial hubs around the world where we believe there will be hydrogen demand. Some of these will be enabled by blue hydrogen, and BP will offer a carbon capture and storage solution. The US Gulf Coast is a good example of that. And in some other locations, we'll be focusing on green hydrogen. Great Plains in the Midwest is another example of that in the US. The last thing we are looking to do in hydrogen is to be a key leading developer and operator of large export hubs in hydrogen. We believe the hydrogen market will not be balanced globally in the future. There will be regions that will be high production regions and potentially export regions, and BP wants to position in these to develop large-scale hydrogen projects. Now, back to the UAE point, I'm honored to say, and we're honored to have been operating in the UAE as BP for over 80 years. We're a partner with ADNOC and other entities in oil production, LNG. Castrol is a very well-known brand in the UAE, and obviously our Air BP and aviation fuel. So we have a long history in the UAE. Interestingly, parallel to hydrogen, BP was a partner in some of the first LNG production in the UAE, and the UAE was one of the big leaders in the market to develop LNG. I think there's a lot of parallels between development of LNG and hydrogen. 1977, we started exporting LNG out of the UAE, which that I think shows the longevity of our presence in the UAE and how they've been leaders. Now, I'm really pleased to say we've actually progressed a number of specific agreements where we're working together with the UAE in hydrogen. ADNOC has joined our H2T site, our blue hydrogen project in the Eastern Cluster in the UK. They've taken a 25% interest there. We're working with Mohammed and his team for them to join our High Green project, which is co-located in the Eastern Cluster of the UK. It's one of these hubs that I was referring to. That will be a green hydrogen project starting 80 megawatts effective of green hydrogen, but that could scale up to 500 megawatts. It could be up to 10% of the green hydrogen production in the UK by 2030. We have joined ADNOC in a feasibility study for a new blue hydrogen project in Abu Dhabi. And we're in discussions, of course, with Masdar to continue to expand the relation. So we're very pleased with how that's progressing. And again, a real honor to be here today, joining Mohammed and the team. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Felipe. Building further on that, Florian, Felipe already talked a bit about the economy in the UAE and the hydrogen economy. Why do you feel it's important to build that?
It's for us of importance because we are an investor. So we are looking at businesses which are in the UAE, respectively UAE headquartered. But for hydrogen and the hydrogen economy, it's important to have it on a global perspective. And when you look at that, the buildup of the hydrogen economy is important and attractive for multiple reasons. First, when we look at the industry overall, at the economy of the hydrogen industry, it's a globally significant market with a long-term growth. So by 2050, the clean hydrogen could meet up to 13% of the world's final energy demand, which is in line with what Philip's assessment is. But as a result of that, it will become a $2.5 trillion economy, provided that the significant investment can be made. And it will deliver over 5 million jobs, which is specifically critical at the time of recovery from the global COVID crisis. Thus, the hydrogen economy built out provides a substantial investment opportunity of cumulative roughly $15 trillion by 2050. So that is an significant potential to invest in, and for us as an investment company, key. The second one, which is equally important, is the socio-economic benefit. And there are two aspects to that. One is that the access and the sufficient capacity of technology, equipment, and services are key to ensure the delivery of the projects. Thus, that provides the localization potential, which is supported in the UAE by the in-country value program. And finally, we talked about it, the decarbonization. The UAE has committed as the first country in the Middle East to the net zero by 2050 in a strategic initiative. And with this investment, we contribute to this. But we take it again globally. And so it's a global measurement or activity to avoid hard to abate sectors in their carbon emissions. When we take this together, it supports Mubadala's position as a responsible investor and our double bottom line, which is to achieve financial return on the one hand side, and on the other hand, to create the socio-economic benefit to the UAE.
Thank you very much, Mohammed, Philippe, and Florian, on this opening thoughts. To continue on those lines, it's Florian, you talked about the global perspective that you as Mubadala have on this topic. As a result, what do you really see as where are the markets? Where is hydrogen going? What are the carriers in your view? And when will there be a truly global hydrogen market?
Very good questions. So let me go through them. From the key export markets, we see those which have got an energy and clean hydrogen supply deficit from their own resources. And Philippe alerted to this. So we see that as predominantly as a center of continental Europe and Northeast Asia. And the UAE is perfectly located right halfway between the two to serve both of those. The second thing is that the UAE is developing these markets, the direct relationship to these markets and the supply chains. This has been demonstrated, for example, by the first clean hydrogen delivery to Germany, as well as the signing of the Strategic Energy and Industrial Cooperation with Austria last week. So with this as a base, we see that the development of the full value chain for project is key in the beginning to make projects economically feasible. Partnerships will be a key instrumental role in that phase. Only later, and that's not yet clear when we achieve that point, once the supply and the demand have achieved significant volumes, we will see a liquid global market. And this is then similar to the development of the LNG market. Until the midterm, we see also a portfolio of carriers and derivatives for hydrogen. And this is predominantly depending on the final use case in order to optimize the cost, the energy efficiency, and the handling of the product. This is also reflected in our projects, which Mubadala, Masdar are jointly progressing. These include, among others, ammonia and sustainable aviation fuel, and more to come.
Okay, thank you very much. Philippe, you mentioned it also in your opening statement, that there's certain areas that are going to be more producing area, other ones more focused on the consumption of hydrogen. Florian gave an introduction to this. What is your perspective?
Look, thanks, Bart. I actually concur with just about everything that Florian has said. We completely agree. We see the market evolving with large export locations where fundamentally you have an advantage renewable energy supply. Renewable energy is the largest cost component of green hydrogen by far. So that will be a key driving factor, and I think it's reasonably well known. Middle East, very well placed. North Africa, certain locations. South America and Australia stand out, if you wish, as locations that meet those characteristics. You of course also need abundant access to land, water, and infrastructure if available. So I think that in that regard, I'm very much aligned with Florian. Those are the markets that we'll see as export. A bit like Florian has indicated, we think the hydrogen market will start local, will become regional, and then will go global. When you look at the technology maturity as well, it is not clear today by 2030 what hydrogen carriers will be fully mature and what technologies will be available at scale. Because it is one thing to build a plant at, 50, 30, 40,000 tons per year. It's a very different thing to build, million ton per year type of facilities. And the export hubs, one of the key advantages will be scale. You really are looking at facilities that will be producing 1 million ton per annum type of hydrogen volumes. You convert that to ammonia, that's, nearly 5 million tons per annum of ammonia, etc. So that will be a key advantage of these export hubs, will be scale. But for that, you need transport vectors that will work and technologies that will be mature at scale. To Florian's point, the efficiency of what we call in BP, the round trip efficiency of these technologies will be very much dependent on the end use. If you need hydrogen as an end use molecule, then certain carriers may be more advantaged than others. But again, proving these technologies at scale, there still is a bit of time to go before we can be confidently say which carrier will be available. But completely agree with Florian. Ammonia is an obvious option. Methanol is another option. E-fuels, liquid organic hydrogen carriers. When we as BP are investigating in all of these technologies, we're partnering companies in each of these technology pathways to really develop these solutions over time, Bart.
Okay. So, Mohammed, Felipe mentioned that the market will go from local to regional to global. So perhaps to take a different angle is, what do you see as a domestic use in the UAE for hydrogen? Where will the off-takers be from your perspective?
Well, let me first highlight something very important to the audience, that UAE has always been an important player in the energy transition sector. This is our fifth wave. In each and every wave, we were one of the leaders globally. We started with oil, LNG, renewable nuclear, and now green hydrogen. Our aim strategically is to position Abu Dhabi and the UAE as a global hub for the production of green hydrogen. Of course, the vast majority of that production will go into export because our ambitions are very large. That's number one. And because number two, we are still in the process of maturing and building our regulations when it comes to the use of green hydrogen in particular. Nonetheless, this is well underway, led by Department of Energy. I myself and Florian Merce and this call are part of this advisory committee. And I believe from now until the end of the year, we have a clear guidance, governance, and regulatory frameworks that enables, that incubates, and that accelerates the demand, creating the demand sector on the green hydrogen part. Let's also not forget that the strategy of UAE since decade now is to diversify the economy and transform it from a resource base into knowledge base. So building knowledge in that sector is key and crucial for us. UAE is suited best to be the hub of green hydrogen because we have the right level of maturity, the right level of experience. We have the right level of infrastructure to enable it. Now, which sectors will be using green hydrogen initially, which comes in phases? We expect that from now until 2030, our demand will be revolving around 200 to 300,000 tons per annum by the year 2030. We believe that the large industrial sectors, particularly the steel industry, will be one of the major demand centers for green hydrogen. We know that we in the UAE, we are an aviation hub. So this is really important. This is why we aim here in Abu Dhabi with the joint venture we created under Masdar brand that has ADNOC, Taqa, and Mubadala. In the green hydrogen business vertical, we are aiming to at least capture 15% of the global aviation sector. So we want to be a key player in the sustainable aviation fuel. Of course, predominantly, we will have Emirates Airline and Etihad Airline being one of the demand centers. And we know that both airlines are internationally renowned. They are ranked in the top 10 airlines in the world in terms of fleets and in terms of routes all around the world. And we know that both airlines have very clear strategy towards decarbonization and commitment into reducing their carbon footprint. We know also UAE is a very important shipping center. This is why maritime, global maritime is part of our strategy. And we believe that this is going to be a very important demand center. So I guess these three would focus on the industrial, on aviation, and on maritime. And then we grow as we progress into the co-firing concept. we are a major producer and exporter of natural gas, but we know that if we learn a valuable lesson from the Russian-Ukrainian war, is that natural gas is becoming a scarce and very valuable commodity. The replacement of natural gas now that fits the purpose and still serves the noble cause of sustainability and carbon footprint reduction is green hydrogen in the form, for example, of green ammonia, that is becoming also a key player in co-firing in the future. That's, in my humble opinion, how the market would evolve moving towards 2030.
So in a way, Mohammed, you already talked about some of the hopes for hydrogen in the future. Where do you see that hydrogen can really change our industries, particularly the hard to abate sectors? And how do you think it will be utilized? Where would you see the impact?
Well, I will see hydrogen on multiple segments. The way we monitor the evolution of that sector as we move forward. One segment would revolve around green ammonia, and that would be moving towards the feedstock to Europe. That would be part of many industries, whether we're talking about fertilizers, whether we're talking about petrochemical industries. It will be also moving towards the cogeneration and power production, especially in Asia Pacific. We know, for example, there's huge demand in Japan and Korea. And once again, rather than moving forward when it comes to the global community of civilized world commitment towards net zero carbon and decarbonization, now many nations around the world are reverting back to, for example, coal firing and nuclear. Now, the green ammonia could supplement such energy production or electricity generation means and work hand in hand. We also believe that green ammonia will be playing a very important sector as the fuel of all the future large ships, the ships that the likes of Hapag-Lloyd and Maersk use in all their shipping routes around the world. We know that also methanol will play, that's a second maybe segment that I see it. Methanol will play a very important role in maritime as maybe the first step towards green ammonia. So we would expect that, large ships would be starting using methanol before moving into green ammonia, and sustainable aviation fuel as a product that depends mainly these two products, methanol and SAF, depend on availability of carbon. And this is where we link the hydrogen into what we call the biogenic carbon that comes from different sources, one of which is, for example, gasification. And maybe on the side, this is a very interesting project that Masdar and BP are working jointly on here in Abu Dhabi. Third segment will be in pure hydrogen form. And there are many projects where we are considering the way we can pump hydrogen into gas pipes across Europe, and it can be blended with gas at certain proportions and certain ratios. And this could be an important segment where we can address, for example, refining in Europe, land transport in Europe, and also steel industries in Europe. That's a third route. A fourth route will be the DRI route for the steel, also particular in Europe. And the fifth and last route will be customizing to our own domestic demand in the UAE.
Thank you very much. Those look like some fantastic opportunities in many, many different ways, but there's challenges too. And I was wondering, Florian, what do you see as the current barriers, but also enablers for capital deployment for hydrogen projects? Because a lot of money is needed, that was mentioned by all of you before. How does that work? What is your perspective on that as an investor?
So as an investor, we are proud that we have just recently analyzed this as Mubadala when we were co-chairing the clean hydrogen workstream of the One Planet Sovereign Wealth Fund network. As a result thereof, we presented the results here in Abu Dhabi at the CEO Summit to the 46 members of this network. Those represent together $37 trillion assets under management. So the positive news of that is that the majority of the members see that the investment in clean hydrogen is an important factor in their long-term investment strategy. So, however, when we asked them, they all confirmed that clean hydrogen investment can be significantly accelerated already in the coming 5 years if appropriate enablers are in place. And those are four per se. The first one is that we have got proper demand side stimuli in place, such incentives and other measures to spur the demand, as well as public-private partnerships, mainly on the infrastructure side. The second one, and it's all about what we talked here about exports, is to facilitate global trade. The third one is, as it's an industry at the nascency of it, and wherever these policies exist, to have sectorial contracts of difference for clean hydrogen and its derivatives. These will help to stimulate the demand, to offset the price differentials to other alternatives, and to make projects bankable, which is key to make these huge capital deployments. And fourth and finally, we need for this to make that happen, a global industry standard for the definition of clean hydrogen that is required to qualify clean hydrogen as a commodity and as a specific asset class for us as an investor, which will be really required to accelerate the investment in this class. That is the positive side, how to circumvent these barriers. The barriers in a nutshell, we have very quickly summarized the currently higher cost for the hydrogen production, the lower maturity of the technology, which we currently still have, and to a subordinated point, the build out of the infrastructure from the beginning to the end. So, but the positive thing is that we have got a clear action plan about the enablers, and all the members of this One Planet Sovereign Wealth Fund committed to drive this forward together. So that gives you a broader perspective only.
Yeah, thank you very much, Florian. Felipe, Florian mentioned his first point, the need for stimulus, but in a broader context, what should governments do to really further support the hydrogen economy, not only in the UAE, but also globally?
Thank you, Bart. I think that's a key point, and it feeds into what Florian was saying with regards to some of the hurdles, particularly competitiveness. This is a new technology. It's a new product. I mean, it's a known molecule, but clearly manufactured differently. And it does struggle to compete at ages when you compare it with, say, gray hydrogen in locations around the world. Also because of the lack of scale and technology maturity. So I think there is a need for support in the early days. This is no different in renewables. I mean, if you recall, 10, 15 years ago, feed-in tariffs in many countries were very common in support of the construction and installation of renewable power facilities. Now, time has gone, costs have come down, scale has increased, and now we're in a position where renewables are, in some instances, the lowest cost of energy supply. So hopefully we'll see a similar trend with hydrogen. Our experience when we're looking, and again, we are progressing investments in different markets around the world in hydrogen. I see sort of two different approaches by government. One is supporting what we would call consumers, whether you call that refiners, steel players, or other chemical companies, with incentives and mechanisms by which they can access funding to reconvert their installations, to Florian's point, or they can access mechanisms by which they can mitigate the cost differential between low carbon hydrogen and gray hydrogen. So we're seeing mechanisms of that nature. In other countries, we're seeing mechanisms that are incentivizing the producers of hydrogen via tax credits, via government grants and contributions for the construction of capacity to supply low carbon hydrogen. So we're seeing different incentives in different markets and on both sides of that. Fundamentally, to my point earlier, we do believe that as governments and countries around the world, including UAE, have declared aspirations to decarbonize their economy, a fundamental need will be to ensure you have incentives in place to make sure that hydrogen can be part of that decarbonization agenda domestically. So that, I think, will be a fundamental bedrock of ensuring that countries around the world build local hydrogen ecosystems. The UAE is blessed because it has high quality renewable energy resources, it has infrastructure, and it has demand domestically. So I think it has the right components to build that sort of ecosystem, but incentives will be required to ensure that the consumers of hydrogen or energy in the UAE are motivated to transition away from lower cost hydrocarbon-based solutions. Over time, and as Florian was indicating, there will be a need as well for global standards around hydrogen, global standards of what low carbon hydrogen means, so that you can start producing hydrogen in one country, exporting into another, seamlessly being able to put that into a hydrogen system in another country, and making sure that trade is then enabled across different jurisdictions. But those are the key highlights I would bring out, Bart, at this stage.
Okay, thank you. You actually used a buzzword or a word that we hear a lot, ecosystem or hubs. I would like to dive a little bit further in that, and specifically, Florian, for you to start with, perhaps, is what do you think are the further requirements to establish a strong hydrogen ecosystem in the GCC and the UAE specifically? How do we develop that value chain and that supply value chain?
So it's a good question, which fits very well with the point which we made in the beginning, that we need to create a socio-economic benefit with our investments here in the UAE. So we see four drivers for that, to make that happen. The first one is to create geographic clusters for hydrogen and its derivatives production. Those clusters need to have an initial significant size and a clear growth trajectory, because that will then, as a consequence, attract the technologies, the equipment, and the services to be localized. The second one, and that fits very well with Philippe's point, what the UAE is blessed with, we have got already some benefits which we just need to utilize. That is our established capabilities in plant engineering and manufacturing, the existing infrastructure, and the location between the both key import markets in the Northeast Asia, respectively, in Europe. The third point is that we need partnership, and because we can't do it by ourselves, and therefore we go for partnership, which is one of our core values, with leading companies to accelerate the development along the entire value chain. That includes the innovation, the manufacturing, and the services. And you have recently seen the announcement, for example, of Siemens to locate here in the UAE an innovation hub. And fourth and finally, as mentioned earlier, we need regulatory support on both sides, on the demand side, but also for the localization of the points which I mentioned before, technology, equipment, and services, but as well as of the uses of green and clean hydrogen. So with these four, we see that it can happen. If you ask me how to put them on the timeline, best is to have them all in parallel, because it's a call for action to make it happen. And the more you have got it together and you reach a critical size in this ecosystem, the quicker this ecosystem starts to flourish by itself.
Thank you. Perhaps, Mohammed, for you to continue on this, because Master has a tremendous experience building up ecosystems. You were talking about earlier the different waves in the UAE before, and also the role that Master has played in that. What is your perspective on developing such an ecosystem or innovation hub in the UAE?
Well, my view would look a bit more holistic since we're talking about UAE and GCC. And it will also spin off from our own experience when we establish the renewable and clean energy sector here in Abu Dhabi, the UAE, and I can proudly say also in the region, because we set precedent, we paved the way for others to follow, since we started at a much earlier stage back in 2006, 2007. And I believe that we need 4 pillars to create such ecosystem on the green hydrogen spectrum. The first one is to develop the supportive regulation frameworks and incentives in supporting the green hydrogen economy. And that would take 2 parallel tracks, one on the supply and one on the demand. So for the supply, the most important thing we always face, the biggest challenge we always face when we talk about green hydrogen is how we can make it commercially competitive. And while in the renewable energy, when the renewable energy project started evolving back in the early 2000s, it was supported globally by all sorts of subsidies. You know, we used to have, for example, green payments within the renewable energy, while in green hydrogen, the word subsidy is no longer politically acceptable. This is why having such incentive schemes at the supply side and at the demand side. Supply side, for example, waiving the grid fee cost that puts a burden on the supply side, the wheeling fees, enable us to use the grid for banking on the demand side. For example, the blending mandates, as we've seen in Europe, and some of the funds that could help us to create more and more demand, especially, while the technology of green hydrogen production mature, while scalability sits place and prices starts driving down. Pillar number 2, I would like to talk about the enabling of competitive financing conditions, which comes with tax import duty schemes for green hydrogen production. We know that now US becoming one of the center focus attention of the green hydrogen economy because of the Interest Reduction Act, the IRA, the IRA bill that was announced recently. We need more of these enablers in competitive financing conditions. That's a very important pillar. We want also to continue enabling access to optimal, low-cost, clean electricity from all new built renewables and grid, because this is a very important ingredient to enable the production of the green molecule, which is the green electron. And last but not least is to support the development of the infrastructure required to enable the green hydrogen economy move in a consistent path towards steady growth.
Thank you. So all of you spoke already about some of the challenges and some of the things that need to be put in place to make this work. One area that we haven't spoken about is talent. Is if we look at the current job market, there is stress in basically every industry. We've seen industry like hydrocarbons, oil and gas has taken a long time to mature, to establish itself. So I'm wondering, what is your perspective on how do we ensure we have the right technical and commercial talent in this sector? And then specifically also in the GCC available to drive this. Felipe, what is your view on that?
Thank you, Bart. You're absolutely right. I think that's a key element, and we have seen clearly, particularly post-COVID, that rebuilding the workforce in a number of key sectors in the economy has been a challenge. from our perspective, and this has been mentioned, I think, both by Mohammed and Florian, partnerships in hydrogen I think are going to be critical for a number of reasons, because there will be complementarity from an infrastructure perspective. There'll be complementarity between the production and consumption of low carbon hydrogen. There'll be complementarity of skills. So, you know, we work very well with Masdar and ADNOC. We believe we're very complementary with their skills technically. Masdar has a very strong portfolio globally in renewables. So again, there are many strengths that we both collectively bring to the table. And I think partnerships will be a key element of how do you bring expertise and competencies together to drive the hydrogen economy. We as BP, you know, we are repositioning and looking to position ourselves as an integrated energy company. We believe, and this is not exclusive to BP, but we do believe companies that have been in the oil and gas sector, in the energy space, have intrinsic capability that is very much transferable to hydrogen. We understand materials very well. We understand transport of gases very well. We have a global LNG portfolio and a trading organization with over 2,000 people around the world that moves energy from sources to consumers globally. So there is a lot we bring to the table vis-a-vis the expertise that we have. Our major projects organization has the expertise to develop large integrated energy projects, transnational energy projects where we're moving energy from one continent to another. So we are definitely mobilizing and actually repositioning a lot of our talent in BP into these growth engines, and particularly in hydrogen, where we believe we have a competitive advantage. So, you know, we're positive from the perspective that we believe a lot of the workforce that was engaged in oil and gas can actually be mobilized into this new sector. You know, one of the points that was raised by Florian and by Mohammed earlier, in the Gulf states, I think this is going to be critical in terms of how we build new jobs, new economy jobs. And we're very positive that many of the individuals and the contractors, the service companies that were working in oil and gas will be able to redirect their skills, their capability, their engineering talent into providing some of the solutions that the hydrogen economy and hydrogen value chains will require, Bart. So that, we think that transition is going to be key, but we believe there is a lot of talent there to pull into this new economy.
Yeah. Perhaps, Mohammed, for you, the same question, because you've been building up a lot of capabilities within Masdar, within the UAE. How do you see the race for talent? How do you see this happening within hydrogen?
Well, I see it the same way that it happened in renewable 16 years ago. So when Masdar was created, it was created to build that knowledge-based economy, to create a new sector holistically. And that sector needs to capture the entire value chain. And that value chain starts with R&D. The first unit that was established in Masdar back then was Masdar Institute of Science and Technology, which was a postgraduate institution that focuses on talent and focuses into bring the right caliber people and evolve, because you need to capture knowledge to be a key player. This goes into pillar number 2, which is demonstration pilots. When the city itself was established, it was established as a clean tech cluster, clean tech hub, to bring these innovations, this talent, to demonstrate on the ground. And then the third pillar is the commercial application. I believe we need to do the same. When we create that ecosystem we spoke of, when we spoke about the 4 pillars that we need to depend on to create such ecosystem here in the UAE and in the GCC, we need to know that one of the important objectives from the creation of such a new sector is to unlock significant value to UAE and the GCC. And one of these important values is to stimulate the creation of high qualified jobs through the development itself, through the operations of these projects. We need now to work at early stage while we progress to look at certain fields within green hydrogen where we need to attract and grow talent in the fields of engineering, in the fields of manufacturing, in the fields of operation and maintenance. And that goes hand in hand in the way we look at it holistically in the way we believe that this new sector will help support UAE and the GCC in the economic growth through the direct contribution to GDP and the diversification of the economy.
Thank you, Mohammed. Florian, you already mentioned some of this because you talked about the double bottom line, but what would be your closing thoughts on this, on the talent aspect?
So while we talked here, I found a very nice parallel with Felipe when he outlined what BP also has and how they can benefit from this as a company. When we look at the UAE, we can benefit exactly from the same, but as a country, because the UAE per se is already well positioned. But we can look back, we have a track record, we have the people in the country which cover all the ingredients for the entire value chain. The large-scale renewables, the gas and hydrogen production and the handling thereof, the conversion to the derivatives, such as ammonia, and the export thereof. All is already there. So it's just the combination, just in quotation marks, the recombination to this new value chain. So the people are there. They just need to look to this. And the positive thing is that the UAE is a relatively small country. So that means that where the people did the jobs so far on this, they can stay and they can just do these activities for the new value chain. In addition, the UAE has evolved over the years to a very nice place with a very high quality of life. That means to attract people to this place is relatively easier than places which are remote and far away. And so there we see a competitive advantage for the UAE to attract new talent, which is then aligned with our growth ambitions in hydrogen.
Thank you very much. I realize we have come to the end of our discussion because time is up in some ways. I want to thank you, Felipe, Mohammed, and Florian, really for your perspectives. It has been insightful to hear, on the one hand, the very positive outlook you all have around the opportunity, but at the same point in time, some of the challenges with the requirements regarding the regulatory perspectives, what is needed to drive demand globally, but also some of the challenges around building ecosystems, supply chains, and talent. But overall, a very positive outlook to really support by establishing the hydrogen economy to drive energy transition. So thank you very much for that. And I want to thank all of you listeners for joining us today. And thank you for attending this discussion. And just want to note that this web series episode will be available on the Abu Dhabi Sustainability Week YouTube channel. Thank you very much.